Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 8, Episode 15 of our weekly Q&A videos. We don't always mention this, but here at the start, if you're on YouTube right now, we did say video, but we do upload this also in audio-only format on our podcast platform. Or I guess it's not a platform, on our podcast? Is it? I don't know what the term would be for it. A podcast. I guess it is just podcast. I don't know.
We're kings of all media.
We're not really. In the description, there's links to a bunch of platforms that you can reach it on that it gets uploaded to automatically every time we do a new episode. So you can go and check that out if you want to consume this in a different way.
Right. And
so the reason why I mentioned it this week actually is because it's sort of relevant to our first question, or the first part of our first question. And our first question comes from Scythe, and they say, took your advice, started...
Scythe or Satan?
Satan.
Is that like a pun on Satan?
Satan.
SAYT10?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they say, took your advice, started listening to podcasts, but questions, I don't know where to post. So I wanted to ask, does the frozen damage caused by Nekron Scythe, which is a 200% increase, happens only when the character equipped with it does it, or it follows to a different character as well? Basically, what I want to do is free someone with Killer Frost Special 1 and then tag in my Special Specialist. I've tried, but it's not yielding consistent results. I mean, you can stun and use Cloak and Nekron Scythe on different characters, no problem. But Frozen is glitching. Would appreciate your expert opinion. So there we go. And so we'll answer the question itself, but the part of it that I like too is that the part at the beginning where it says started listening to podcasts is not clear if they've taken our advice about the medium of podcasts in general, or if they listen to our podcast specifically on the other platform.
Oh.
So I can't tell.
Or even the podcast that we've recommended.
Yeah. So it could be a specific podcast that we've recommended. It could be we've sold them on the idea of podcasts in general, or it could be that they're now consuming this on a podcast platform, and I have no clue which one it is.
Yeah.
Either way, it's good.
Yeah, I sort of answered this as a short comment, but I think the answer was slowed isn't the same as frozen. Her special 2 freezes in the middle. Her special 2 doesn't freeze. Mm-hmm. And part of the confusion, I think, comes from the way her specials are described. So Special 1 Killer Frost serves up an icy treat on the rocks, applies Deep Freeze, which does not actually freeze the opponents.
Yeah, because Deep Freeze is not a frozen effect for damage boosting.
Yeah.
Which is bad. It's bad language.
Right, and Special 2 Killer Frost summons an unblockable freezing wind and deadly ice attacks. And that, they're actually frozen, so when it's the difference between slowed or not moving at all.
Yeah, so the problem is the actual phrasing that the game uses doesn't give you enough information to figure out what's happening. You actually just have to base it off of like the animations and the like visual effects.
Right. Now, so what's interesting, if you haven't looked at the wiki for Injustice, the mobile game, it's actually quite good. There's a lot of information there. It's not necessarily as up to date, but it's got even when it's not, it's got some interesting history of what's been going on. So if you look at the characters that actually freeze for the effect that you want to get with Nekron Scythe, where you get boosted damage, there's Green Arrow Prime on his Special 1, Arrow Green Arrow. There's a chance of freezing on the combo ender. Then there's Superman Prime, who freezes on Special 2, and Killer Frost Prime, which we're talking about now, in the middle of her Special 2, and Superman Godfall, who also does it in the middle of a Special 2. Mm-hmm. And why that matters is that means there's really only 3 characters that you can swap out after freezing. So if you want to freeze and then bring in somebody else with Nekron Scythe, it's Green Arrow Prime, Arrow Green Arrow. Oh, it's weird. It's like Batman Ninja Batman.
Yeah.
So it's not that great because I'm trying to think. I guess the closest thing to somebody you'd use, I mean, Green Arrow Prime, I think, is a silver. So that means you're working with a silver team unless you want to have it unbalanced. And the golds, Arrow Green Arrow is not bad, but it's only a chance. So it's not something that you can really work with the same way as a strategy. And Superman Prime, he's not a great character anymore. His passive kind of stinks. I mean, the Superman Prime and Regime Superman both used to have their place when you didn't have all the really great challenge characters, but as a gold, they're pretty low level, and their passives are, I think they're both damage related. One gets boosted speed, I think, and one gets boosted damage when their health is low enough, and only once, so that kind of sucks. And maybe this speaks to, I mean, I love this game. The fact that we've been doing this for years is sort of a testament to that. But one of the minor annoyances I have is how similar effects have slightly different names that count differently in the game for the same reason. So it's like, for example, the steal power for Phantom Zone, it's not all the times that you take away power. It's very specific types of way of taking power and taking it for yourself.
Yeah.
And reflect damage percentage for gears. When they give it percent, sometimes it's a percent chance of it happening, and sometimes it's a percent of the amount of damage that you reflect.
Yeah.
Like it's all sort of arbitrary. And then there's heal versus regeneration versus health swap. And it wouldn't matter so much if there weren't other effects.
Versus revive.
That depend on that. So it'd be nice if there was a bit more consistency. I think the fewer categories of it would actually be better, because now that they've developed the game so much, where there's different tasks that you need to do. And
then I think Astro Harness also, what's the phrasing where it talks about generating a shield or something? Because that works differently than Revive, where it triggers in the exact same circumstances that Revive should, but it actually doesn't do the same thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff that gives you health, and then there's is Killer Crocs creates health, or
I think he gets.
I don't know how it's phrased, but it's, you know.
So on lethal hit, 75% chance to trigger Power Shield that will absorb damage up to 40% of max health.
Yeah, so Power Shield instead of Revive, which triggers in the exact same circumstances, but does something very practically different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff like that where there's just like one-off abilities that work differently than everything else that you would think to compare it to, and a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah. But so I guess the answer is, maybe a bigger answer is that Nekron Scythe, the real power is that it's only the second gear that boosts stunned damage the same way. Mm-hmm. And that single ability matters more than anything else. If you had a gear that only had that one ability, I would still be slapping that on somebody on my team.
But the freeze in the actual swap out is not very consistently usable, and it's only usable in those sort of narrow circumstances, and that's why you can't use it with Killer Frost as you're describing.
Yeah. Stun, there's gears that stun. I don't think there's any gears that freeze.
Yeah.
Right? So you have a lot less flexibility in the kind of teams that you can use. So those are the kind of gears that, while they have a really interesting effect, aren't nearly as useful or as meaningful. Like, here's the thing. You've got, I guess you could say the same thing almost about that Cloak of Destiny, League of Assassins loadout, where it's really the Batgirls that take advantage of it. But you've got so much potential with maybe not as much as like a nuke kind of thing with Luchador Bane and Batgirl, but that you can really manipulate it in a way so that, you could have static coming into stun and doing damage yourself, bringing somebody else, one of the Batmen, to stun, and then, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much more play, because there's so many different Batmen, and there's so many different stunners. And so Lexor Gauntlets will stun, Cloak of Destiny will stun, I think Batman's Cowl will stun. There's a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. Anyways. Yep.
So there we go. Our next question comes from T_player, and they say, "Hi, about a month ago, I started playing the game again after multiple years of not playing. I currently have only 3 elite, 7 level 50 gold characters, and then I'm not going to read all of this because there's just the specific gear loadout and the specific, augments of each character. But my best character is Regime Hawkgirl, and then her stats, and then her gears. My second best character is Black as Night Martian Manhunter, and then stats, and then gears. And then my third strongest character is Bounty Hunter Lobo, and then stats and gears, and it's sort of goes from top to bottom, most to least sort of gears and stats. So Bounty Hunter Lobo is pretty sparse in terms of gear and augments on him.
Right.
And then in online matches I win a lot, mostly because Hawkgirl carries my team's damage and Martian Manhunter just heals the whole team, and Lobo is just kind of there. What characters and gears should I focus on? By the way, I just found this channel and I already love the content."
Well, thank you, T-Player. That was very nice. Maybe better than to talk about specific gears and loadouts is like the general principles, especially when you're starting out, I think.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly that using your best characters, the ones that are the strongest, that are the most evolved and the most whatever, it works against you. I was going to say it often works against you, but I think it really does work against you if you're trying to compete in multiplayer. I mean, if you've got the gears, the best ones that you want to focus on in general. And this is when I first saw this question, that's what I thought of. The best gears would be Tantu Totem, Master's Death Cart, and League of Assassins Knives. However, all the basic damage gears, and I think T-Player had Butcher's Knife, but unevolved on Bounty Hunter Lobo. Nth Metal Morningstar, which is a basic damage gear, right? At +10. Mutated Bone Spikes at +5. Blade of the War God at +10. So those are all basic damage gears, right? So you'd think, in general, it's good to do that first. However, one bit of advice I have for everybody starting out is that any of the basic damage gears, not just the 3.5-star ones, but all of the 2.5-star and 1.5 stars, those are still good. So Mark of Lady Shiva starts as Mark of the Tiger, and when you max out Mark of Lady Shiva, there's a 50% basic damage boost and a 40% crit chance boost.
Mm-hmm.
So 50% instead of 70. Okay, a little bit less, still significant, and 40% crit chance instead of 45. That's still really good. 5% difference in crit chance.
Yeah,
and
not huge.
And the cost to fuse them and evolve them are great. So Power Gloves, which is a 2.5-star gear, which is also the same combination of basic damage boost plus crit chance boost, right? It starts off as Shock Gloves, but when you max it out, you get a 35% damage boost, which is half of the 3.5-star versions. But it's still got a 30% basic damage boost, which is still 2/3.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the math, and according to the wiki, and I don't think I credit the wiki enough. I don't mention enough. People should really be looking there for a lot of the good, useful information. They've done a lot of the math, and I'll quote from there. For Power Gloves specifically, ignoring the power credits cost, and I think that's fair because there's so fewer packs now that you can buy with power credits, right? There used to be so many more good things to buy with it.
Yeah.
That I think it's fair to just look at the shards. That's the bottleneck, right? That's the scarcest gear resource. Ignoring power credit cost and assuming minimum output. So you get 6 reds and 6 blues. Evolving it breaks even after 4 gear pieces are shattered. And ignoring the power credit cost and assuming minimum output, 7 red and 7 blue, maxing it, so not just evolving, but maxing it up to +10, breaks even after only 7 gear pieces are shattered, compared to what you get on the base amount. So when you think about it like that, these are the most common gears.
Yeah.
When you get a gear pack,
you're going to be getting a lot of them.
Yeah. Getting 7 gear pieces is not that hard. And once you've gotten past those first 7, you're profit. You're making profit.
So it's a good way of investing in your characters to give them better gear in the short term that you won't use in the long term as you get better stuff. But then in the long term, you actually are making just a straight profit from them by shattering them again. And
the part that people don't maybe focus enough on it is that the gear itself is still pretty good. You spend some coin maxing it out, it's still useful to you. Until you've got the full complement of gears, you're going to have a spot on a team that needs to do basic damage for both Power Gloves and Mark of Lady Shiva.
Mm-hmm. And it will in the long term help you out getting shards anyway. So it's good in the short term, it's good in the long term. The only thing that it really costs you in the short term is credits.
Yeah. And I think the characters that you want to focus on, so aside from gears, the characters you want to focus on are the ones you want to play. You like to play because they're fun to play, or you like to play them because they're characters that you like. You know what I mean? Like it seems, yeah, there's definitely teams that are good. Those are really obvious. Like the Flashpoint team is really good. We've demonstrated. I mean, this is a probably a place to pimp out the videos that we've done. We've done a lot of multiplayer teams.
Yeah.
And there's usually something there, whether it's because they're really good together, there's something really fun you can do with them, or just to prove a point. But those are the teams that you could use. But if you're going to focus on who to get and who to develop, get the ones you like.
The real answer, if you're looking at who to focus on, is focus on whoever's a challenge on a week that you can both do the regular difficulty of the challenge and have enough time to get as many copies as possible.
Yeah.
So if you have a week where you have a good amount of time to play and you can beat the challenge 5, 6, 7, all the way up to like the 11 times you need for eventually maxing them out, that's your best bet, because that's the way of getting... That's the only consistent way of getting a bunch of the same character every single time without paying real money, I think. I don't think there's that, or spending way more than you would from a pack.
Right.
If you're getting them directly in the store.
Right.
So I think beating the challenge over and over and over again is definitely the most ultimately efficient way of getting a character higher up. And it is also a good way of getting experience for some people.
Right.
Because in the earlier ladders, it's a great place to pull other people through. Because you often don't need a full team. And then for the challenge requirement levels, if that person isn't as leveled or anything, that's a good opportunity to drag somebody through, get XP. You get good money from it. You get pretty much everything from it. Except for, I think, like, augments and, like, obviously, like, breakthroughs. Like, stuff that's specifically from other modes.
Right.
But in terms of everything else, you're getting pretty good return on investment. So that really is the answer. And then, it's also more playing. So hopefully that's inherently fun for you if you're pouring a bunch of time in the game.
Yeah, I guess people have different sort of goals when they play. Some people just want to play to finish, but when you've got a game that has online play, it's sort of open-ended. And when there's so much stuff, to finish it completely would take years. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it'll take years of playing hours every day. But if you're looking just to complete your collection, you can set whatever sort of artificial intermediate goals that you want. Yeah. And if all your goal is to finish the offline play, then all you need to do is max out anybody. Mm-hmm. Really, like, I think getting Flashpoint team up to like 50-7 or getting others up to 60-10 is going to be enough to really get you through that.
Yeah. And I guess you talked earlier about how using your best characters works against you. What we should say there is what we mean is that, winning consistently is always the most important. And the best way to win consistently is to have gear that is as good or better than everybody that you're fighting.
Right.
So if you are not winning every time, you say you're mostly winning, you win a lot, mostly because hot girls. So if you're not winning all the time, I don't know what the percentage would be. We haven't done the specific math on how much you lose out if you lose, but I want to say at least comfortably more than like 80%, 90% of the time, I think you should be able to complete at least the 5 battle ladder consistently. And if you can't, then what you're going to want to do is use whatever your characters that are a little worse than that and keep inching back until you reach a point where you are winning consistently, are getting that full completion reward. As long as it's not like as long as you're not looking at like half the battle points per match. Right. And then your gear will come in clutch. You'll start to be able to win fights a little bit faster. You'll win fights faster and more consistently. And I think it'll end up in a more efficient overall grind when you're not losing out on that like final battle completion bonus for your bigger ladders.
Right.
Yeah. So there we go. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Our next comment comes from Pinnacle, and they say, "Hey guys, have you considered branching out into other games? By now you could consider Injustice running on fumes, and it may be worthwhile diversifying the games you play to draw a larger audience. Just a suggestion. As always, love the content." So we have mentioned this.
The thing I'll add today, because there was actually an article in the Toronto Star today about a guy who had become successful sort of decoding the strategy in YouTube for creating viral videos.
Yeah.
And that he was able to consistently create videos that had more than 20 million views each. So it was reproducible, and he'd figured out not so much an algorithm, but sort of the features that make it. So he apparently started off, I think there's some Mr. Beast.
Yeah, I know Mr. Beast.
And that he started off by making a video of himself counting from 1 to 10,000. Mm-hmm. And so he's got this formula.
Is Mr. Beast the person who they said cracked it?
That was the focus of that article.
Yeah.
And that he'd become very successful, and he's got 4 billion views a year.
Yeah. So it was an article about Mr. Beast.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So instead of one of the points of the article was that a lot of people, their goal, like ours, is to do as little as possible. Mm-hmm. But they're hoping to do as little as possible and then become really popular. And his was the opposite, right? Like, if anything, he was leaning into some of it, how difficult it was and how hard it was, and trying to in an attempt to try to figure out what it would take to make his videos better. And the cost of the videos went up so that it went up from maybe 10,000 a video to, I don't know, like 100,000 or something. There was one that actually cost him I can't remember, some big ridiculous number where he's giving away a bunch of money too.
Yeah, no, I've seen, because a lot of Mr. Beast stuff is really sort of big, flashy. It's very much that like new wave of YouTube where it is about, like, where you do need to actually already be successful for it. Because I remember there was, like, a time, like, years ago where somebody showed me a Mr. Beast video, and it was some sort of, like, list video or something similar, and it wasn't very good, and it's the kind of thing that you'd expect somebody in their, like, early 20s to make, you know?
Okay.
Right? Which is, like, I'm not saying, like, it was bad. I'm saying that it was nothing like what his stuff looks like now.
Okay.
And he was, you know, maybe slightly uncomfortable on camera. Like, he didn't have the same, like, magnetism that I think a lot of YouTubers have. But, you know, like, none of that I'm holding against the guy, right? Like, I think he was a fine dude. I'm just saying, like, I would say all the same things about our videos, right? And I would be harsher on our videos.
Yeah.
But just to say that, you know, he was doing stuff for a long time, right? And then I think he hit on something that worked, and then he just kept pushing with it. And I think, like, you can say that, like, he cracked the formula on it. But I think that even just that perspective on it, coming from, like, a newspaper, is probably that, like, external perspective, that really misses a lot of the nuance of it, and is the same. It'd be like saying somebody who had, like, won the lottery, like, 2 or 3 times, had cracked the formula on winning the lottery, right? You know, where I think there's stages of luck, and I think he is doing it really smart. And so the lottery example doesn't work as well, because there's no way to, I think, improve your odds at all for winning the lottery.
Right.
But it would be like if a statistician did some really complicated math and then figured out a way to make it 10 times more likely to win the lottery. And then somebody said they cracked the code on winning the lottery, right? Because it's still, like, tiny odds. And I think there still is a lot of stages of luck within that. And I think if you actually want to talk about anybody who has broken YouTube's formula, what you need to look at is the incredibly low effort, there used to be, like, multi-channel networks, which were just, like, groups that would have, like, some amount of, like, bargaining power in terms of, like, copyright stuff on YouTube. But now there's a different version of, like, networks that own a bunch of channels, which is companies that are just content farms that just churn out, like, hundreds of channels, and that kind of, like, really, like, the life hack videos, those kids content, YouTube channels, right? So Mr. Beast, I think, less than hacking it, has found a niche in which he can put a lot of work, time, and money into making a very specific kind of video that appeals to a wide audience. Whereas those other ones, you know, they do put some time, they do put some money, some effort, but their whole goal is to pump out as much formulaic content that I don't think stands very much on its own for artistic merit at all. And those companies can actually make a ton of money, I think, making very little of substance or value, like reusing the same thumbnails, reusing the same clips over and over from videos, or just even re-uploading entire videos. And so there's people documenting that. There's stuff like 5-Minute Crafts, So Yummy, and there's different channels that have talked about, like, life hack channels and other stuff. Anne Reardon, How to Cook That, has a really good series where she goes in depth into debunking cooking hack videos, but it's sort of gone larger into looking at what YouTube terms of service are, looking at what the consequences for these creators are, and sort of asking critical questions about how YouTube as a service positions itself as something and then doesn't actually follow through with it when it's profitable for them to ignore those sort of little channels. And so those channels, there's, like, one company that did, like, a 1 million subscriber plaque unboxing video where they just, like, every, like, 30 seconds in the video, they unboxed a new 1 million subscriber plaque from a different channel, because they had, like, 100 YouTube channels that had all surpassed 1 million subscribers using the same sort of format. Right. And so, like, when you look at, like, Anne Reardon's video and stuff like that, you can see that a lot of these, like, life hacks just don't work. A lot of them are very clearly faked and would have had to be faked because there's no way that the things that they're doing are actually functional. So they're just, like, clipping together a video. And so what they have is, like, a relatively high production, like, bullshit studio, right? Where they come up with an idea, or they'll use, like, shaving cream, for example, to, like, clean, like, a stain out of, like, a carpet or something. And so they'll just, you know, like, put something like tomato sauce on a carpet, put shaving cream on it, and then in a different take, wipe it off a clean carpet and be like, oh, that works. And just that sort of, like, valueless, like,
lies.
Yeah, like, but, like, cookie cutter content. And I think that, if anything, has hacked YouTube's algorithm. Right? But, I would just say that Mr. Beast is like a hardworking content creator who has been lucky a lot of times in a lot of ways, but also consistently followed up that luck with work and, like, trying his best and making good content.
So that's actually, I mean, that's fair enough. I've never seen any of Mr. Beast's videos, so my first exposure was in this article.
Yeah.
And the article, they were pushing more the fact that the idea that he had, instead of having an idea of what kind of content he wanted to create, was experimenting with stuff and figuring out what was actually, which parameters made a difference. Like, how long was the video?
Yeah.
What kind of thumbnail? The kind of, like, anyways.
I think that's the kind of stuff that almost every, like, professional YouTuber does, though.
Yeah, and the point, I guess, circling back to the question, is that that's not us.
Yeah.
Like, we're not interested in that. I think you're right. A lot of people have asked us this question. And the problem is, a big part of the appeal, because we don't, and this ties into the comment from before, right? We're not here to be exaggerated over the top personalities. We're doing it because we like the game. We're doing it because, you know, it's kind of fun to do. And at the point where it stops being fun, we'd probably stop doing it. We're not making a living at it, and we're not even close, and we're not even going to be trying. It was nice to get into the YouTube Toronto parties when they used to have them. But
before it became a pop-up space.
Before it became a pop-up space. That is another story.
So sad.
So, yeah. But, what was I going to say? I'm losing my train of thought.
That we're not like that sort of going where the money is.
Yeah, because we'd probably be putting more effort into our thumbnails. Our thumbnails are pretty low key.
Yeah.
So are we. And it was never about creating any kind of, I don't know, personality or YouTube thing. It was just, it was, for me at least, it was participating in space and having the chance to do these things that we would otherwise not get to do, like going to the parties, like hustling for advanced reading copies of books that I wanted to read, stuff like that.
We do it because we like it, and we like what we're doing now more than we would like the combination of effort and uncertainty and sort of launching new stuff that it would require to potentially be more successful doing something else. And I think we understand enough about what YouTube looks like to have a better chance than the average random person off the street, and we have enough of a built-in audience to have a little bit of a better chance than some random person off the street of like a video taking off. But I think we don't actually, for people looking at us from the outside as YouTubers, to be like, oh, well, you guys could probably pivot to something. We don't actually have enough expertise, I think, or enough built-in audience or anything like that to just be able to really have a high chance of pivoting to something else successfully.
So I guess, sorry, now I remember what I was going to say. Where I was going with that is that, so we haven't made a push to make our personality the thing. So where we've been able to retain an audience has a lot to do with our expertise in injustice and the small number of people who are looking for something a little bit less frantic or frenetic or just, caffeine infused content. And we can do that. What we can't do is develop that expertise really easily in another game to the point where there'd actually be value or where people would want to watch, I think.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to be able to offer a lot of tips or sort of expertise, like you said.
Yeah, I do have ideas for other videos that are sort of informed by the types of people that I like watching, but also the types of stuff that I think I could practically make videos about, kicking around somewhere in my head. But
you've got one coming up. You're in the process of making one.
Not right now.
It'll be at least a few more weeks before you're ready to actually get all the footage together to put together. Like, you've got the idea.
It'll be a long time. It'll be a while. Yeah, no. I have in my life, there's things that happen and I'm like, that could be a video. And so, like, one of the things that I think in the style of reaction channels like Cody Co, Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez, not like reaction channels the way that like old YouTube conceptualized them, sort of looking down their noses at them, but like that sort of new framing of them. And then also like Eddie Burback, Gus Johnson, a lot of YouTubers that I look up to. There's some stuff, right? Like, I had an interesting interaction with Tommy Wiseau's merch company for The Room. That could be a video. There's an Instagram account that I started following that I think has really sort of strange and interesting content that I think could be worth looking at in a video format. And then like Garfield Eats and Scooby Eats, like Nathan Masry, like just tracking that guy and what he's doing is just like a really bizarre sort of series of events. And I think like the perspective that I have on them, if I framing that and just presenting like what I've seen of stuff, I think would be potentially interesting and cool. But that stuff all is like work, and it's work of a type that I'm not familiar with. And those videos and those video formats involve people like, you know, sitting at their desk, showing their face, intercutting, talking. And for all that I've watched a lot of their stuff, right? And for all that I like know YouTube enough that I can sort of, I have I think a better sense again than your average Joe of what that would look like making. I still don't actually have very much at all of the practical expertise required to like turn my idea into a video. And a lot of it would still be, I would not be in a position much better off than somebody starting from scratch. And then there'd also be the concern for stuff like that. I wouldn't really want to post that on BDCKR Gaming. I think I would like tell people about it here and say, hey, go check out this other channel that I made. But like, I don't even know how, like where I would be putting that. And so there's like a lot of sort of those like tiered levels of uncertainty and challenge that are required to do anything that's not what we're doing right now. And I think there's a good chance that there will be other things that we hit on that aren't exactly this that we will do eventually, but it won't be because injustice is dying. It won't be because you know, we think it's time to do something else. It'll be because we sort of happen on it the same way that we happen on this, because until that time, it doesn't make sense for us to do the work for money because we're not making a lot of money.
And I'll say as a counterpoint to what you're talking about, because you've already got the ideas, and to me, that feels like it's the most important part. If people have looked back on what we started doing, they'll see all the rough edges and all the stuff where we stumbled really badly. And I think the fact that you've got these ideas that would make really good videos, you're more than half the way there. Putting in the time, to me, it's just time. You've got it now. And if you wanted to, you could... It would take you a couple videos to figure out. You do it the same way we just started doing this, right? And our first few videos were crap. Yeah. But it was doing it and doing it a little bit mindfully where you'll end up getting. So maybe the first couple ideas don't turn out exactly how you intended. Yeah. I think you've got enough ideas that would be worth it.
Yeah, so we'll see. Like that's just where we're at. That's just honest, because whenever people are like, hey, you should do this for your channel, I think it's always a good opportunity for us to be like, hey, here's what's, you know, what we think about our channel. Yeah. And I think
because that changes over time.
Yeah. And I think what we think about our channel is often different from what other people think about our channel. Right. Because I think for anybody who sees like our subscriber numbers, I think when I think about our channel, I think about us making content for a pretty low number of people who like listening to us and, you know, maybe interacting with, maybe not. This is a great time. If you're at this point and you have a question for us, please send it in, because we don't actually have a ton of questions this week. And we would love to have a higher rate of questions so we can talk to more people, because I know there are people who watch us consistently who don't, you know, have questions for us, don't engage with us that way, and that's fine. But if you are one of those people and you've ever considered it or can take a second now to consider it, you'd be helping us make content.
Right. But you've got a story about that too. When you say, when people looking in see the number of subscribers and stuff, you have a funny anecdote. I don't know if you want to share it here, where you bumped into somebody in real life and you got started talking about YouTube channels.
Oh, I already shared it on
did you already?
A while back. Yeah, it was, you know, people who watch us consistently. I feel like almost like I'm punishing people who listen to us consistently when we share the same stuff over and over again. But it was, yeah, like I talked to somebody who, was like, who had a video that went pretty like big, and they were like about to brag about it, and then I had like, it turned out I had way more subscribers. They were like, oh, like they realized I had a YouTube channel, and they're about to be like, oh, well, you know,
so
you're gonna be excited to hear this.
But it feels no, but the twist, sorry, the turning point, it feels like you've already jumped past the turning point where I thought the story was related, is that you guys, the way you told it the first time was that there was a conversation about YouTube channels. Yeah. And you'd mentioned it, and they were asking, oh, how many subscribers do you have? With the intent to sort of
flex on me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I have 20,000.
But that they had fewer subscribers, but they had a bigger niche that they could potentially exploit.
Yeah, that I see their channel actually being very easily more successful than ours, given just a little bit more effort. Right. Than what they were putting in without monetization. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, stuff like that is really interesting. And I think the thing about like YouTube is that there is such a huge difference between, and I think sometimes it's success based, but there's the people who have like figured it out and who are using it as a platform very like professionally, where like half of the job is business and half of the job is content creation. And then there's other people who really like the whole job is content creation. One of the things recently, I was watching a video by Noah Caldwell Gervais, who does like he's like a video game essayist, I guess, like video essayist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he talked about in the video was that he had never turned on AdSense, and he had more than 100,000 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in reference to talking about how essentially like we don't have control. I forget where he was using it, like even what game that he was talking about, because I just thought that like I like hearing him talk, and I think a lot of his points are really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's talking about how YouTube actually very recently has revoked not having ads on your videos. So
you can't not have ads?
So what happens is now everybody has ads on their videos by default. And if you are partnered with YouTube, that's the only time that you get access to the tools for the ads and have the opportunity to get like a cut. And so I think from the way that he was saying it, I don't know, we'd almost have to test this because we do have our videos monetized, if we could actually turn off ads or if we could just limit them. But YouTube sent out a thing that basically said, so for any like smaller channels that don't have the option to monetize or not yet, for any like private, you know, people who have like channels that are like, you know, just like videos of their family or whatever, like every video on YouTube now can be monetized at the sole discretion of YouTube.
Right.
And you have to just reach a certain threshold before you get a cut.
Right.
Which is just different.
It's a shift. It's not subtle shift. Yeah.
Yeah, but the important part of that was that he is a person who clearly, you know, he has a Patreon, and so he does do this professionally, and I'm sure through his Patreon, does a certain amount of, you know, Patreon backer rewards or whatever. I didn't actually look at what his backer rewards were, but he is a person who, you know, saw a way of just getting more money, but getting it through YouTube and said, no, I'm good. Right? Mm-hmm. And so he is clearly somebody who is still doing it for, first and foremost, the content.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, he is obviously an example of somebody who's more successful than us and who is, I think, doing it full-time professionally, although I'm not 100% sure. You know, he's at least got like more than 100,000 subscribers, right, and he makes good videos, and I've heard him like referenced by other like video game essayists as like somebody who's like really good to like listen to. Mm. But he is not making videos in the same way that someone like Mr. Beast is. And I think Mr. Beast is making content that is enjoyable. I think he's done a lot of collaborations with other big YouTubers, and he doesn't make exactly my type of content. So I don't think it would be fair for me to say, like, I don't like this as much, so I don't think it's as good. Mm-hmm. But what I think is probably fair to say is that the type of content that he is making, even if the process of making it directly is enjoyable, I think he is making it first and foremost for it to be content and not, you know,
to game the system.
Yeah, for content, for money, for a living. I think he is, you know, treating it like just a really weird and really cool job. Right. In a way where, like, you know, when he's doing all these challenge videos, or that, like, when he like did a store where he gave everything away for free. Mm-hmm. It's like a video where he rented it out and he bought all that stuff and then he gave it away in the store. And I think, you know, obviously that's a cool thing to do, and maybe that's like a very fun thing for him to be able to do. Mm-hmm. But it's not the kind of thing where you sit down and you say, here's what I'm passionate about doing, which is to do whatever new flavor of the week of opulent challenge, right? Where, you know, and which isn't to say it's not inherently enjoyable, right? But just to say that it's not, I think it would be hard for somebody to start and say, I don't care if I wasn't getting paid any money. I don't care if I was getting paid minimum wage. I want to just, like, that's the thing that I want to do. Right. So there is sort of that distinction between people who are like a little bit more like business minded and people who are a little bit more like just content minded. I think we are absolutely content minded and not business minded.
Yeah, I think, all right, so that's a good distinction, the content versus business, because it feels like in one case you're talking about how they're using the medium as a tool to get their ideas out, whereas the other way you're using your ideas to get the most out of the medium.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I think the other thing is that if we were business minded and not content minded, I don't think us trying harder to do the same stuff that we're doing would necessarily have given us a better result anyway. So I think, you know, part of it is that we just would prefer to have fun with this. And the other part of it is that unless we blew up and became very successful accidentally first, switching to being more business minded wouldn't have actually helped us that much. I don't think we'd be that much more popular.
I think the issue is that what we're doing is not scalable. It doesn't just enlarge because you know, put in twice the effort, you'll get twice the result out of it. Yeah.
But so there we go. Not as many questions this week, but we didn't even get through all of them still, and we're out of footage.
Yeah, I guess we
A
could
little
always
shorter.
stick some more. I meant to do a quick review of a book. I guess I could do that next week because I'm reading slowly. I'm reading a third book by the same author.
Yeah, I think maybe we might save it.
Okay.
Just in case we get a similar paucity of
Okay.
questions going forward. So to finish up, first off, shout out to Eliza Watch Pose Caton. She wants me to watch Pose. It's a show. This shout out has been brought to you by a 2018 musical drama on FX about New York ball culture. And it is on UK Netflix apparently, but not Canada Netflix. So it's unfortunate for my access. VPNs. Yeah. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon.
And that would be Consul Peasant and Edwoon, supporting us at the highest tier, last word. Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, and Eddydoo, supporting us at the credit level. And Chris Wolf, Scarlett Danny, Awesome Gamer 241, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isfar E at the gratitude level.
So there we go. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Komoda.